There are stories that sound too strange to be true, and yet something in them feels real enough to make you wonder. Tonight's tale isn't about ghosts or monsters or ancient curses. It's about something much more familiar. A father, his son, and a promise he should have never tried to keep. They say love can make people do terrible things. And sometimes, when you cross a line, what follows you home isn't always human. This is Mega Macky Deluxe, a story about how far one man went to make his child smile. Welcome to NightLore. Being a single father is like walking a tightrope over fire. Every step feels like it could burn you alive. And no matter how careful you are, you always get burned anyway. My life hasn't been good for a long time. I work a dead-end job at a hardware store in a town nobody's heard of, scraping just enough to keep the lights on and the fridge half full. The stack of unpaid bills on my counter grew taller every week. Sleep was a luxury I stopped affording years ago. But there was one reason I kept going. My son Danny, he's 10. The kind of kid who smiles through everything, even when he shouldn't have to. He never complains, never asks for more, even though I know he deserves a hell of a lot better than me. He works hard at school, helps around the house, and somehow always finds a way to make me laugh when I'm too far gone to smile. It was a week before Christmas when he came home from school. Eyes bright, cheeks red from the cold, and his backpack bouncing as he ran through the door. "Dad," he shouted, grinning ear to ear. Guess what Mrs. Higgins said? "I'm getting an award for doing so good on my tests." You remember what you said, right? My stomach sank. Of course I remembered. I told him that if he worked hard and brought home good grades, I'd get him the toy he'd been dreaming about for months, the Mega Macky Deluxe. Macky's Funtime Playhouse was a kids' show that aired locally. Over-the-top mascot songs, bright colors, the kind of thing that drives adults insane and kids obsessed. Macky the Fox was the star, a red and orange suit, with a top hat and a smile too wide to be comforting. The Mega Macky Deluxe figure was the crown jewel of the toy line. Every kid wanted one. Every store was sold out. Resellers were charging hundreds online. And I didn't even have enough to cover groceries. But when Danny looked at me with those hopeful eyes, I couldn't bear to let him down. So I did something I'd never done before. Something I swore I never would. 3 a.m, I parked outside the Mackey's warehouse on the edge of town. The place was surrounded by chain-link fences and flickering floodlights. I'd passed it 100 times before on my way to work, and every time I'd noticed how lax the security seemed. One old man half asleep in a booth. Someone had already cut a hole in the fence, probably kids looking for trouble. I slipped through the gap, heart pounding so hard, it felt like it echoed off the walls of my skull. Inside smelled of dust oil and old plastic. The kind of smell that clings to your clothes and doesn't let go. Rows of towering shelves stretched into the darkness, stacked with colorful boxes, props, and spare parts. Then I saw them. 3 mascot suits standing side by side near the back of the warehouse. Macky the Fox, Cherry the Bee, Giggles the Clown. They loomed in the dim moonlight, their oversized heads tilted just slightly, like they'd been frozen mid-step. Their smiles felt wrong, too human, too aware. I tried not to look at them. I wasn't there for that. I was there for Danny. I found the aisle, lined with boxes, hundreds of toys, with Macky's cartoon grin plastered across them. And there it was, Mega Macky Deluxe. The box was bigger than I'd expected. The figure inside looked detailed. Too detailed. The joints almost looked like they could move on their own. I grabbed one and held it to my chest, my heart thudding like a drum. When I turned to leave, I froze. One of the mascot suits was gone. Cheery. The yellow one. I ducked behind a crate, clutching the toy like it could save me. My breath felt too loud, my heartbeat too violent. Then, from the other side of the room, came the sound of metal scraping. A mop bucket. The old security guard shuffled into view, muttering to himself as he dragged it along the floor. I stayed hidden until he wandered off again. Then I ran, out the loading dock, through the hole in the fence. By the time I reached my car, I was shaking so hard I could barely put the key in the ignition. But when I looked at the box in the passenger seat, I smiled. For once, I'd done something right. I placed the box on the kitchen counter and went straight to bed, exhausted and guilty. When I woke the next morning, sunlight was pouring through the curtains. Danny was already awake, sitting up in bed, when I walked in with the toy. The way his eyes lit up, I'll never forget that. "Dad, is that him?" I smiled. "It's all yours, buddy. You earned it." He ripped the box open with shaking hands, laughing and gasping like it was the best moment of his life. Watching him, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. For one beautiful moment, the world felt okay. I didn't think about the warehouse or the missing mascot. Just my son, smiling, laughing, alive. That peace didn't last. A few days later, I was outside the hardware store on my smoke break when I saw him. Across the parking lot, by the edge of the street, Macky the fox, red and orange fur, crooked top hat, just standing there. I told myself it was someone in a costume, probably a promotion for the show. But he didn't move. He just faced me. When I looked away and looked back again, he was gone. That night, I noticed something else. Macky's face was everywhere. Billboards, posters, toy stores, kids walking down the street with Macky backpacks. I'd never realized how much of this town was plastered with his grin until that day. But it wasn't the same grin I saw on the billboards. In my head, the one in the parking lot had been wider. Too wide. It was late when I left work. The roads were empty, just the way I liked them. Halfway home, I saw something ahead. A splash of red and orange in the middle of the road. I slowed down. It was Macky, standing perfectly still, his head tilted. For a moment, I thought, it's just a guy in a suit. Then his body twitched. Once. Twice. Then again violently, his limbs jerking in impossible directions, head snapping to the side before straightening again. My stomach twisted. Something about the way he moved it was wrong. Like watching a puppet with its strings tangled. I tried to reverse, but before I could, he dropped onto all fours. And then he ran. Not like a man in a costume. Like something that had too many joints, too many muscles, bending the wrong way. I slammed my foot on the gas tires, screeching. The headlights caught him for just a second. His grin stretched across his face like it had been carved into the suit itself. He was fast. Too fast. I tore down the road, my heart hammering in my throat, until I hit the main street. When I glanced into the rearview mirror, he was gone. I pulled into a gas station and sat there shaking. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't human. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the warehouse, about the missing mascot, about how Jerry had been gone, and Macky had come for me. It wasn't random. It wasn't coincidence. He was looking for me. Or maybe for what I took. I went home, walked into Danny's room, and found him asleep, the toy on the floor beside him, its little plastic eyes catching the moonlight. I picked it up carefully. The plastic felt warm. I didn't want to believe it, but somehow I knew. The toy was connected. I slipped outside, heart pounding, and threw it into the trash bin behind the house. When I turned around, I froze. Macky was standing at the edge of the yard. The moonlight hit his fur just enough for me to see the red and orange shimmer. He didn't move, didn't speak, just raised one arm, slowly pointing straight at me. I bolted inside, slammed the door, locked every window I could find. He didn't follow. He didn't need to. The image of that grin burned into my mind until I finally drifted into a restless sleep. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen and stopped. The toy was back, sitting on the table, clean, perfect, like it had never been outside. Danny ran in behind me laughing. "You found it." "Thanks, Dad," I didn't tell him. I couldn't. Everywhere I went, after that Macky followed. In reflections, in crowds, in shadows that didn't belong. And every time his arm was raised, not toward me, toward the toy. That's when it hit me. He didn't want me. He wanted it. That night, while Danny slept, I went into his room and picked the toy up one last time. I whispered, "I'm sorry, buddy," and left. The drive to the warehouse felt endless. The place looked worse than before, half the lights out, the rest buzzing faintly. The cut in the fence was still there, but this time, it bent inward, not outward. I stepped inside, clutching the toy so tight my knuckles hurt. The mascots were there again, all three, standing just as I'd seen them before. I placed the toy on the concrete floor. "I'm sorry," I said. My voice broke. I shouldn't have taken it. I just wanted to make my kid happy. Silence. None of them moved. They didn't need to. Their presence alone made the air thick heavy, like I was breathing guilt itself. "I'm sorry," I whispered again. Then I turned and walked out. For the first time in days, I thought maybe it was over. When I got home, Danny was asleep. His small hands were empty. No toy beside him. For a second, I felt relief. Maybe it was done. Maybe we were free. I went to bed exhausted, and for the first time in weeks, I slept deeply. Until I woke up to Danny screaming. I ran to his room, ready for anything, and froze in the doorway. He wasn't scared. He was smiling. "Dad," he shouted, surrounded by boxes. "Look, you got me the whole set." I couldn't move. Every figure from Macky's Fun Time Playhouse was there, cheery giggles, and half a dozen others I'd never seen before. All brand new, all unboxed, except one. Macky himself. He wasn't in a box. He stood at the foot of Danny's bed, motionless, larger than the others, his crooked top hat casting a shadow across the floor. I blinked, and he was gone. Danny was still laughing, arranging the toys in neat little rows. "You're the best, Dad," he said, not looking up. "Macky said you'd come around." I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just stood there staring at the empty space by his bed, trying to convince myself it wasn't real. But I could still smell it, that faint, bitter scent of oil and plastic. I never saw Macky again after that. At least, not outside. Sometimes at night, I hear Danny whispering in his room. Not in fear, just talking, laughing. And every once in a while, when I pass his door, I hear another voice, deep, playful, and wrong, whispering back. I tell myself, it's just the TV. I tell myself everything's fine. But deep down, I know. Macky never wanted me. He just wanted to come home. If you ever find yourself alone late at night and you hear a child laughing through the walls, just remember, some toys never stop playing. What we do out of love can haunt us longer than fear ever could. If you enjoyed tonight's story, don't forget to leave the lights on when you go to sleep, because sometimes the darkness is the only thing keeping them from seeing you back. This has been NightLore, where every whisper hides a truth you wish you'd never heard. Good night, and sleep carefully.